All right, I'm excited to be joined here with Alex and Karl from Jimmer Range. At this point, this is going to have to be this annual thing we do. Obviously, I'd love to have you back again before next year, but last year's 21 Questions preview was a lot of fun. I do want to lead a couple of things for those that are new here. Obviously, their Twitters will be on the screen. All of their links will be in the description below, and they'll have a chance to plug everything. Their shows will be coming out again here shortly to preview the college basketball season. There are three things that tell me that college basketball is back. Secret scrimmages would be number one. My weather app telling me that I'm getting a frost advisory, not even in November yet, which tells me that college basketball is the dead cold of the winter. I'm so excited. And then this 21 question preview is always like a really I know that the prep is worth the while. I first want to, before you'll do any plugs, I want to get this out of the way now so you can comment on it and think about it for a second. But I do want to thank you because I told you in the pre-show before we started recording that that first viral Instagram clip had happened, from that Trivia Showdown show. I still get comments and people talking about that on that show. I've had people reach out to me before recently, and it's just really heartwarming to hear that stuff. It's like, that was, hilarious. It actually led, funny enough, it got noticed by a local radio station in North Carolina, based in the Triad. And long story short, I became a guest on that radio station and built a friendship with some guys over that radio network. Shout out to Tobacco Sports Radio on WBGB 1470 AM in the Triad. They found the video. We started talking, got connected. And because of you two lovely fellows, I'm now a guest on a radio show in the Triad. So thank you. It's the first time I've said this to you publicly or even privately. And welcome back, Karl. How are you? I'll start on the right.
I'm doing well. Yeah, it's really good to be back. And even I'm glad that that's been the case for you. And this is, it's cool to think that the first time we came on your show was almost 2 years ago now. And we're still here coming on your show. I mean, it's been a minute that we've been doing shows together. So this is always a lot of fun. Thanks for having us back.
Alex, how are you? I know the Northwestern season is going to take all of your time here shortly. So
it is, but excited to be back. I'd echo a lot of what Karl said, but yeah, this is just so much fun. It's so light. So it's a little bit unserious at times. So I enjoy this.
And it's not on purpose either, to think that you guys both have a lot of really great things to bring to the table. And there's actually some context to a lot of these questions here for those that are new. 21 questions. This is supposed to be fun, but also to get a general overview of where our thoughts are in college basketball. For those listening that may be from my NBA audience, Giannis did just sign a 3-year, almost $200 million extension. So we'll talk about that next week, but just wanted to put that out there as we're recording this. I'm scrambling, trying to figure out what the heck's going on and doing the intro. So we have 21 questions to get to. I do not want to delay any further. I do want to mention that the Everything College Basketball magazine that I was a part of, almost 300 pages of every conference, and we did forget the A10. So if you have ordered and you were wondering where the A10 was, there is a new updated magazine in your email address. Please check that. We do apologize about completely omitting the A10. I know it had a bit of a down year last year, which might be a hilarious reasoning for that. No, it was completely accidental. But the pre-orders have ended. It is live. It's in your inbox. You have a flippable link magazine as well, and then you also have the full PDF. It's $10, ecbmagazine.bigcartel.com. You can get all of your previews. There's some really cool stuff in there. The Screener did a top 50 players ranking. That's already gotten some interesting backlash as well. And there's also some really cool interviews there, including with Curry Hicksage and Trilly Donovan. We're giving some exclusive interviews in there. So we're super excited to bring this out to you guys. ecbmagazine.bigcartel.com. A lot of those questions in there from, I may have stemmed from some of my research. I covered a lot of the ACC, Mountain West, things like that. A lot of the smaller conferences as well. So we'll talk a lot about that stuff here today. That is my only, hopefully, plug right now. Guys, I want to leave the context out for question number, or lead out with some context. Alex, and I believe the 2021 preseason, this was on y'all's show. Obviously, your famous clip of you predicting Virginia Tech to win the ACC tournament, which I think, anytime someone can make that serious of a comment, and yet it's still, obviously we didn't understand the context of what that Virginia Tech team would look like. We didn't understand that they would beat, I think they beat Carolina and Duke on the way to that title. So to think that there was a lot of pieces that had to happen there, it was a really big pull from you, Alex, there. I did want to give you some context from last year. I don't normally like starting with the hot take stuff, but I have to give Karl and you both some credit. Last year, Karl said, I don't think Indiana's that good. They were a first-round upset. That was the common theme of last year's episode, was Indiana not being good. Maybe that's the theme again. We'll see what happens. But and then Alex said a Duke player won't make all-ACC first team, and Kansas won't make it out of the first weekend, which both were correct. So, big shoes to fill, Alex. I'll give you the first start here. What is your hottest take coming into this season when you went 2 for 2 last year?
Dang, that's a crazy legacy to kind of uphold going into this year. Can't believe either of those are right. I will say, I want to introduce a little bit of a caveat. Kyle Filipowski probably should have been all ACC first team, and he received the 6th most votes. So I know that was a bit of an argument when we did our hot takes episode, and Greg and Karl gave me a little flack for like trying to give myself an A+ on that, even though like on a technicality, it's right, you know, but
it is.
Yeah, I struggled with this because thank you to Trevor for giving me like giving us a little bit of like a teaser for what some of the questions would be. I have settled on buying full stock in Caleb Love in a New Jersey.
Okay.
And he's going to be an
I love that. This is awesome.
Oh. See, for those that are listening and wondering if that's serious or not, I have to believe you because it. Anyway, keep going.
There's not much rationale behind it. It's more like I just kind of feel it. He's got a new change of scenery. I do think Tommy Lloyd is going to ride him harder than Hubert Davis probably would have. And mechanically, listen, you can't glean that much from these secret scrimmages or the summer exhibitions or the overseas trips. However, his shot looks a little different and a little more fluid, I want to say, when it comes off. And that's only from a couple snippets we've seen, but he was 9 of 12 in their exhibition. He had 23 points. I think he also had like 7 assists. And I do just think playing along like Kylan Boswell and being surrounded by the talent on that roster, plus obviously Amar Ballo, I just think he is, I don't know. I think the change of scenery is going to be good. And as a Duke fan, I am very worried for when he returns to Cameron on November 10th.
All I have to say is I put out a tweet after that like deep 3 he had to go into half of that exhibition, and I was like, Arizona fans, if you're seeing this, just remember that you're in for a ride. Karl,
it'll be a roller coaster. However,
I can't wait.
I'm excited.
I can't wait.
Yeah, going from Kerr Kriisa to Caleb Love is a very underrated, like, you know, through line there, I think.
The blood pressure for Arizona fans is not going to get any better.
So. Karl, what you got for your hot take?
All right, so I have one and sort of another one. They're both coming from the Big East. So this year I'm taking up the mantle that Alex took up last year, and I'm so in on the Creighton Blue Jays. They are going to the Final Four this year. I understand if you look on paper, you see, okay, they lost Ryan Nembhard, they lost Arthur Kaluma. You might say that on paper they're less talented this year than they were last year. But I think the on-court fit for this year's team is so much better. It's Ryan Kalkbrenner, who's an anchor I can really get behind, surrounded by shooters. Like, there's just so much shooting on this team. They bring in Stephen Ashworth from Utah State, who shot 43% on like something like 7 attempts a game last year. Like, he can really light it up. They have Trey Alexander back. They have Baylor Shireman back. There's just, it's Ryan Kalkbrenner surrounded by shooting. I can really get behind it. I think last year, which was still a team that made the Elite Eight and were a shot away from going to the Final Four, they were still a little disjointed at times. It was a little like your turn, my turn when it came to the offense. Yeah. I think this team fits what Greg McDermott wants to do a lot better. And so, yeah, I'm bought in on Creighton. My sort of bonus Big East take is I'm out on St. John's. I just don't think that they're going to be anything. Like, I get the appeal. Obviously, Rick Pitino coming in, he's completely reinvented the roster. They have 12 new players who are going to be playing for St. John's this year. But there's just no way to convince me that they're going to be in competition for a Big East title at any point this year against the likes of Marquette, who's bringing back most of their production from a 2 seed last year, and Creighton, who I already mentioned, and UConn, who's bringing back a lot of guys from a national title, and who else? Villanova, who's one of the most experienced rosters in the country. So that's my bonus take is I'm out on St. John's.
I like that you went with probably the better choice of the Big East when last year I think I said, and I don't care to comment much this year on because I've done enough college basketball preview. I'm giving you guys the floor today, but I picked Butler to be a sleeper in the Big East last year, which was quite the L. So year one, that motto, we got some, we've got only can go up from here. So I like it. Those are going to definitely be on record because last year when like I said, when you guys go, almost perfect last year, I would say the Indiana one is up for debate. I mean, whether you think they were not good enough to make a tournament versus not, making a tournament, I don't know. But you said they weren't good and, they lost in the first round to an eventual Final Four team. So, all right, this one's fun. We talked about, you mentioned a couple of guys already that I'd like to get to, but I really am curious about this because I think this can go in a lot of different directions. And I don't know who I started with last time, but I'll ask Karl first. If the National Player of the Year award isn't a big, and the reason I say that, if you just use the Almanac's top 5 of players, you can use any combination of those, and we'll get to some other guys later. If you just use the top 5, whether you think Kyle Filipowski's a forward or a big, he's pretty much both. The top 5 players in the country, according to most places, are bigs. So again, here we are another year. Last year we talked about Baycott a lot. We talked about Sheboy a lot, etc. If the National Player of the Year award isn't a big, who wins it, Karl?
This is actually a really difficult question to answer because you actually start to parse it out and it's like, who even are like the elite guards in the country? There are definitely some who are really good, but good enough to win National Player of the Year. Like you got to be real nice. The guy I ended up going with was Wade Taylor IV from Texas A&M. I think he's going to have the scoring output. He's going to have the usage. I think Texas A&M with their backcourt returning is going to be a pretty good team this year, probably top 3 in the SEC. I don't know that like Tyler Kolek, he's probably going to be a popular pick for this question. I just don't know that he like will have the scoring output to be like the last time. Like when was the last time we saw a National Player of the Year who didn't really score? I guess it was Sheboy, but that's because he was pulling in like 15 rebounds a game. Yeah, so I think you need a bucket getter, and I'm going Wade Taylor IV.
Alex?
I kind of went with the same calculus as Karl, went with the guy who probably will theoretically have a lot of volume, will have a lot of usage, and is a high scorer. But I went with Tyson Walker.
Nice.
I think this Michigan State team is really good. I'm bought in on them, and I understand why people are hesitant, given that like this roster remains the same and you lose Heiser and a lot of things. But I don't know. I Walker's probably the best guard in the Big Ten, and to me, that's enough to like put him in contention. I know the Almanac had him, I think, in like the top 15 probably players in college basketball. Maybe he was top 10, but yeah, when I just think he's probably going to get into that 17, 18 points per game range, and the amount of shots Izzo's going to let him take, and how much of like a microwave scorer he can kind of be once he gets hot. That to me just all kind of spells National Player of the Year. That being said, I don't think there's a world where it isn't a big.
So the follow-up question is, who is the National Player of the Year?
Do I answer that first or Karl?
Yeah, you were already on the point. You might as well. You said it was a big.
Yeah.
You said if it's really going to be big, who is
it?
Yeah.
Back to back.
Okay.
I don't know. It's so hard, and I don't know whether voter fatigue will have a role or anything else happens. But when a guy averages like 23 and 12 or 24 and 12 or whatever it was, I think it's hard to, when he comes back on a roster that's theoretically improved a little bit, like I just don't know how it can't be him, at least in the preseason. Obviously, when the 31 games are played, it's a different story.
Karl?
Yeah, I would second that. I just don't think voter fatigue should affect this. Like he's very clearly to me the best player. He's the most impactful player. He's going to be on a team that they were a 1 seed for most of the year last year. Obviously the wheels fell off eventually, but they're going to be better, I think, this year. They're going to be a little more consistent this year. I think the backcourt will be better. And all that will do is contribute to a Zach Edey Player of the Year case. Like he's back. He's still going to be dominant. I don't see the argument really for like who's going to be more dominant and more impactful than him.
Yep. No, that's completely fair. The player of the year thing, I think just for fun, I had to throw out. And I know the photo fatigue thing is hard to push aside, especially like in the college basketball we don't see as much anyway versus the NBA. But I can't see why Hunter Dickinson can't win it, but at the same time, I know that there's a lot that has to go right more than wrong there.
Yeah,
So
he was my pick last year, so.
Yep, I remember, and I was like, I understand the situation may be better, and again, there's got to be a lot more that goes right than wrong there. I like going off the board, and again, for those that are new here, this is not supposed to be in any particular order or for any formality. You're going to hear us go all over the place. This question was the order. I just kind of threw them in, but when doing the magazine research, like I said at the top, I did ACC Mountain West, and then when you really start getting into the weeds of college basketball, you start doing your MAC, your MAAC I'm referring to. I did the MEAC, Big South, CAA, SoCon, American. You start doing these conferences where you're like, man, I'm starting to get to know the fourth highest scorer on, insert team of the MEAC here, right? Or Coppin State or whatever. What mid-major are you guys most intrigued by that you don't think nationally enough people are discussing? So I think I would have to eliminate St. Mary's as an example, just like if that's your bar, right? Because they're preseason top 25, Gonzaga, same thing. If I guess reaching outside the top 25, what's a mid-major that you're intrigued by that not enough people are discussing? Karl?
Yeah, I'm gonna hop over to the Big West and throw out the UC Santa Barbara Gauchos. They've been to 2 of the last 3 NCAA tournaments. They have an elite guard in AJ Mitchell. They bring over Yon Traore from Auburn, who's a 5-star recruit. I think they kind of pop up. They've been a dangerous program when you look at, they've been a popular upset pick the last 2 times they've been in the tournament. They should have beaten Creighton the one year. And then last year, I forget who they matched up with in the first round. I think was it Creighton again? No, it was Baylor. They played Baylor in the first round. It's just they have an elite guard. They have a defensive stopper in Josh Pierre-Louis. They have, Yon Traore, who has, I think, a pretty high ceiling. We haven't really seen what he can do fully. And I think being out of the SEC and going over to the Big West, I think he's going to have a little more of a platform to show off what he can do. So I like UC Santa Barbara. I know they're sort of trendy whenever they make the tournament, but I think this year they could actually be like good.
I completely agree. Alex? Shout out to AJ. I always get his name mixed up. He follows the pod. Shout out to Ajay Mitchell. Alex?
I'd go I'm going to stay in the Midwest here and go Milwaukee in the Horizon League. Bart Lundy exceeded expectations in his first year with the Panthers. They won 14 games in the Horizon League. They lose several key figures in that front court, but when BJ Freeman is back, you're going to be fine. So there's likely your Horizon League Player of the Year. And then beyond that, that defense got worse. I know I credit a lot of this I'm basing off of the Almanac. So shout out to Lucas Harkins for writing the Horizon League preview. But when I believe it was, I want to say Markeith Browning went down, that their defensive efficiency ranking almost dropped like 100 spots. But he's back. That backcourt is elite. Those like top 4 guys can all put it in the hoop. And then there are questions in the front court, but I don't know. Maybe I'm falling victim a little bit to the coach speak here, but I'm a little high and confident that Lundy and the Panthers are going to be right back at the top of the Horizon League again. So
the Horizon League is going to have some tough foes there at the top. They'll definitely be super competitive. Not a conference I'm in the weeds with at this time of the year, unfortunately. Remind me who else I guess could be in there. Youngstown State, I think, is going to be really tough. Am I correct on the conference? And some
Northern
others,
Kentucky.
Northern Kentucky is going to be good. So I think you've got some teams there. That should be a fun, but probably a 3 to 4 team race there at the top. Going the other direction, Alex, if I gave you Kansas, Duke, and Purdue or the field to win the national title, who would you take?
The field. That's too many teams. The NCAA is such a high variance tournament that, like, this is going to be my reasoning for a question we'll get to later.
Okay.
But like there are so many outcomes when you put 68 teams into a single elimination bracket. Like to me,
It's fair.
to me, I'd rather have the 30 other teams that could feasibly get a little hot. And I'm also, again, I expressed how high I am on Michigan State. And so that to me is probably why I would take the field a little bit here, though I am a little partial to the Boilermakers pulling a UVA 0.2 and 2.0 and figuring it out after dropping to a 16 seed. So I get the hype around that.
Karl, I'll change the question slightly then, just because the way he said it was the way he worded it was interesting. If I added Michigan State and Marquette, does your answer change? If I give you the consensus top, if I give you the top 5 teams in the preseason AP poll, or the field, while you're thinking, that omits UConn, Houston, Creighton, Tennessee, FAU, Gonzaga, Arizona, Miami, Arkansas, A&M, Kentucky, San Diego State, Texas, North Carolina, Baylor, USC, Villanova, St. Mary's, Alabama, and Illinois. That omits a lot of teams.
I'm going to take the field still.
Okay.
We're coming off a year where what was it? Not a single 1 seed was in the Final Four.
And UConn was not ranked preseason. So.
And I think there's a lot of parity this year. Like, I don't even know. I'm still trying to figure out if I think the top 5 is like really the top 5. I think there's a lot of really good teams this year, but I don't even know. Like Kansas, I think I would have as my number 1, but I still have big questions about Kansas. Like, Bill Self, he figures it out. He's, traditionally played through the post, and he now has an elite post player in Hunter Dickinson, but they don't really have anybody who can shoot like at all. Yep. Like Kevin McCullough, not a shooter. KJ Adams, not a shooter. DeJuan Harris, really good facilitator, experienced guard, not a scorer.
Timberlake's probably it, right?
So I have questions about them. Like, I would second what Alex said. Like, I would love for Purdue to follow up the 1 team sample size of who was lost to a 16 seed and what they've done afterward. But, we saw that the lights were too bright for that backcourt last year, and we're kind of projecting that won't happen this year, but maybe it will. Like, who's to say? I do think the extra year will certainly help. And then Duke, I'm truthfully not that sold on Duke. Like, I know they were the number 1 team in the Almanac, but I'm not quite there. I think, again, like a team that I think will be very good, but I think a lot has to happen for them to be that, number 1, number 2 team. You need Tyrese Proctor to actually break out and be that guy. You need Filipowski to not lose a step. And him and Ryan Young carried the team for half the season last year. Like, the only reason Duke was as good as they were for that first couple months was because Flip and Young were just pulling down every single offensive rebound, and Flip was the best perimeter player they had and the best post player they had. So I would still take the field, but it made it a little tougher. I would still take the field, though.
Put you on the spot then. Let's answer this. Let's go ahead and answer question number 6. Who is the preseason national championship pick? Obviously, your mind's probably going to change before the first game, but got to put it on record. Who do you think wins the national championship if we all flash forward here to April 4th, 5th? Karl?
I'm going to avoid the question and just give you my thoughts on who I think the Final Four teams are. My preseason Final Four, as much as I disagree with that construct, I've never actually done that before, but my preseason Final Four is going to be Kansas, Purdue, Creighton, and Texas A&M. Those are my Final Four.
Interesting.
And then take your pick.
Alex?
I have to stick to my guns a little bit this year because I feel like someone asked me a month ago to just pick the national title winner. And I was like, okay. And I landed on Michigan State.
Yep.
So I'm going to stick with that. And then for the sake of the exercise, I will also give 3 other Final Four teams, in which case I will say Arizona, Purdue, and I'll throw a little bit of a flyer in here and say Rick Barnes can break the curse and Tennessee will make the Final Four. I don't know if I love anything I just said, honestly.
I don't, only because do we not? I know that this is so tough to say, right? But I'm going to continue to push this. Why can't Florida Atlantic get back when they returned 14 of their best 16 players from last year? Like,
Because they shouldn't have beaten Memphis last year. That's why.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
don't
I
get
haven't.
Karl started on this.
No, look,
this is a bad road to go down.
I got a chance to see him last year a couple of times, and look, it's so. This is one of those things that like I can get myself in trouble with because like I know that they could have probably lost to Memphis. Let me just put it that way. But I also think Memphis is going to be insane too. So, and that was the only one in the any of the House Enterprise or ECB polls to vote them in the top 25 to start the season. I also did their preview, so obviously that's going to be skewed that direction when you spend that much time with a team and really go, okay, these guys are old and all experienced and know what they're doing, and it kind of ends up the math ends up adding up. But anyway, I think there's some interesting teams omitted there, but I like this, and I'd love to look this back later and be like, this is all the reasons why you guys were right or wrong in one direction or the other. What coaching seat or what coach, whose coaching seat is feeling the hottest as we enter this year, Alex?
Gosh, there's so many directions you can go. I'm gonna stick with the conference I deal with all winter. I'll go Chris Holtman.
Yeah. No, this is where I thought you would go. So I'm going to ask you a backup answer outside of the Big Ten.
Oh, come on.
Just because I gave you the script doesn't mean just because I gave you the questions doesn't mean I'm not going to go off in a different direction, because I have a feeling I know where one of you or both of you may have leaned on some of these questions, so I have a backup for some of these. I knew you were going to go Holtman because as a married in Buckeye I have to follow them, and I do agree with you.
Holtman, I also had Greg Gard on there for what it's worth as well. I think being a Bo Ryan disciple can only carry you so far when you sputter in the post-Johnny Davis era. And I know it's only been a year, but also I think Wisconsin is good. I want to introduce that caveat. I'll go – dang, man. Stole my thunder. See, now I'm thrown off. I'm trying not to give okay, I'm just gonna cop out Kenny Payne. If he doesn't turn it around, gone. That seat is scalding hot. It's Louisville. That's a team that sits right below the Blue Bloods in the sport, or views itself as right below the Blue Bloods in the sport.
That's a great way to word that instead.
They're gonna send him packing if this team wins sub 8 games, sub 10 games.
I also think that they have one of the best assistants in the country waiting for that job to open up too. So, Karl, whose seat? Smith? It would be Nolan Smith. Karl Heiser, who is the hottest, warmest, whatever word you want to say, seat that needs to be worried about their job?
I mean, I'll go to the Big Ten and I'll say Ben Johnson from Minnesota. I mean,
the Big Ten coaches are just screwed. This is this is great.
Just the fact is, you can't win 6 conference games in 2 years and not expect your seat to be just scalding. I just don't. And if you want me to go outside the Big Ten, I'll say Wayne Tinkle from Oregon State, because they made the Elite 8 run in 2021, and obviously the expectation after that is okay, you're gonna build on that. Then they win 3 games the next year. Then they go 11-21 the year after that. We'll see what happens with Oregon State, because their conference is just crumbling and everybody's going other places. I don't think Oregon State has a home yet, unless I've missed something. So, might just be time for a change. They might not have the money after the Pac-12 dissolves to afford the buyout, but, just the last couple of years have been very, very bad.
I don't disagree with any of those, and I didn't think anybody was going to go super far off the beaten path for that one, because I don't think there's a ton. The more I looked at the landscape, I realized that there's a few, obviously, sure, the Big Ten teams that weren't winning, et cetera. You can look at some of the ACC schools that I would, I guess, be more fond of talking about publicly. Some of them did some of their shedding last year. I think Kenny Payne's the easy answer. I think there's just a lot of first years out there too. A lot of coaches moved this offseason, which I'll actually pivot to a different question. Number 10, what was the best coaching change or hire in the offseason? Or I guess what will reap the benefit of that decision, Alex?
I guess this goes against what Karl was saying 15 minutes ago, the obvious answer to me is Rick Pitino. And I don't want to go that direction, so I'll go Mike Rhodes at Penn State. I think it's a total 180 from what Shrewsbury had built, kind of like culturally and like schematically, the way Penn State wanted to play. And now you figure VCU is going to be more athletic, be more defensive minded. But I was reading the athletics profile and what Rhodes kind of envisions at Penn State for the future. And I want to say in it, there were like multiple anonymous. I always love when anonymous coaches are used within the same conference because they just get to throw shade out left and right. And they were like, this isn't going to work. Like, it's not going to work at all. They're not ready. And so I do just kind of buy him. I'm buying the Rhodes stock, just being able to kind of, I don't know if he's going to be able to like full on replace what Shrewsbury did, but he's from Pennsylvania. That's got to carry some weight. There's the track record from VCU, and the defensive pressure. Plus, I mean, Ace Baldwin's about as good a guard you can have in the Big Ten. Yep. So,
Karl, before you answer, one of you last year, I can't remember. I went back and listened to it yesterday and this morning. One of you said Dennis Gates last year, and I think you were right on the money, whichever one of you that was. So
that had to be Karl.
Probably. Karl, who do you have as the best coaching? We know it's not Rubino, but who do you have as the best coaching change or most, who will see the most benefit or reap, however you'd like to answer that?
Yeah, I don't know about the short term for this pick, but I really like Grant McCasland to Texas Tech. He built a winner at North Texas with like a real identity. They won 30 games last year. They won the NIT. With like a lot of very good teams were in the NIT last year. A lot of really good major teams. And, I think maybe our idea of how easy it is to succeed right away in the Big 12 has been a little bit distorted just because we've had guys like TJ Otzelberger come in and be good right away and Jerome Tang come in and be good right away. But Grant McCasland, like Jerome Tang, is a Scott Drew disciple. And Scott Drew disciples, they build strong cultures, and at least based on what we know so far, they win games. And that's been very clear with what Grant McCasland has done at North Texas. And I think maybe not immediately, but in a couple years down the line, I think he will keep Texas Tech competitive. And he'll build like a real identity at Texas Tech. They have a really good fan base. It's really hard to win at Texas Tech. And even though he's not the flashiest, I still really like the hire there.
Yeah, casual Tech fans are going to realize how good he is very quickly. One thing I will say, just for the North Texas fans, it might be like, oh, no. The ones that really know, Ross Hodge was the reason their defense was so good the last 2 to 3 years, and he took over, obviously, after McCasland. So North Texas is still in a great spot. Do I think they win 31 games again? Probably not. But like you mentioned, the NIT was really good, and they were one of those teams up there, obviously, winning it. So, all right, let's go with... I'm trying to figure out the best way to keep going because we're basically all the questions go from there's a serious undertone for the first 10 and then it completely changes. So I'm trying to keep it as serious as possible and then just let it go off a cliff. I'll start with this because I like the other question as like kind of the last like team related fun thing overview. What conference gets the most teams in the tournament? And if I'm correct, last year, and this is off complete memory, so one of you correct me. Last year, was it not the Big 12 or was it the Big 10? I can't remember. You would think I should probably have that in front of me, but I have no idea.
I think it was the Big 12.
I think it was too. We were all because Oklahoma was down there at the
bottom,
got in
but they could have been in 9.
Yeah, it was something like that. I knew it was something nuts. So, Karl, what conference gets the most teams in the tournament, and why? If there's a reason.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to grab the low-hanging fruit. I'm going to say the Big 12, which not only to me is still the best conference top to bottom, but they're adding 4 teams, one which is a surefire tournament team, and the other 3 which are just going to be wins for everybody else. Like to BYU, Cincinnati, and UCF are good in a vacuum. I think they're going to get knocked around this year in the Big 12. And that's just going to be, padding everyone else's resume, I think. And, before it was crazy that if they did get the most last year, that's crazy with only having 10 teams in the conference. But I think that will continue even, adding these extra teams.
Alex, answer while I'm looking up who hit it last year. I'm pretty sure it's the Big 12. Let's see.
Oh, I don't really have much to add. Carl kind of took the
Oh,
bullet
okay.
points that I had, but yeah,
Why
the Big
isn't
12.
why isn't it the Big East?
Why isn't it the Big? Again. I think it just goes back to like top to bottom. The Big 12 is deeper.
Okay.
And while I might take like if you gave me like the 3 or 4 best teams in the Big East versus the 3 or 4 best teams in the Big 12, who wins it like a national title out of those 4, I would probably take the Big East. But again, I just think it like if we're talking about quantity and talk about the respect that this team that this conference like earns, or at least the weight it carries within the NCAA selection committee, I think it's the Big 12. Close second, the ACC though for sure.
Okay. The
I,
ACC,
I
huh?
think that's it. I need it to be clear that if that like wasn't believed as sarcasm, it was. I just wasn't sure how it
The
came
ACC was
across.
sarcasm.
Yeah,
Okay.
The ACC is not good.
I think there's a clear draw line in the sand. I haven't really said this much publicly, but I have the top 7 teams as all teams that can make the tournament, maybe the 8th, and then after that, it's like a complete fall off of a cliff. So, which obviously splits the conference perfectly in half. According to this, I'm trying to find who had the most. If there's any other resource that I'm not remembering that would make it easier, record by conference. Here it is. Perfect. Most bids. The fact that Conference USA had 1 bid last year. The SEC and the Big Ten were tied at 8 apiece, which
Stop putting
sounds
stop putting Big Ten teams in.
right. But this is the 2023 NCAA Division I men's basketball tournament on Wikipedia, so that sounds right.
I mean, that makes sense. Like Texas Tech, Oklahoma missed from the Big
Yeah.
12, so that's at least 8 right there. And then
Fair.
I'm trying to think who else missed. I can't. It wasn't West Virginia. I don't know.
I'm looking at a few now. Let's see. Auburn was there. I'm just talking about the SEC because they were up there too. Indiana, Iowa State. We already talked about Big 12. Sorry.
Did Oklahoma State make it?
I don't think so.
Oklahoma State.
No, they didn't. They
Texas
didn't make it.
A&M made it for the SEC. So yeah, there's a few in there that make it interesting. Just I wanted to throw that out there because I was curious now. All right, this is always fun. Hopefully you both have the AP poll in front of you or nearby. Alex, what team ranked in the preseason top 25 are you lower on the consensus? And the reason I'm asking you first, this is part of the reason I don't like sharing my notes ahead of time, is because in quotations last year, I don't think anyone in this top 25 misses the tournament. And I quote from last year, and as we know, the number 1 team in the land preseason did not make the conference or the NCAA tournament. So, would you like to have some redemption here?
I'm ready to swing and miss again. Florida Atlantic.
Okay. All right. We already kind of talked about it, so let's hear why. Because Karl had the whole Memphis thing. I know, but I got to know why. Because this is a team that I'm excited about.
It's not that I'm not excited for them. Like Dusty May and the Owls are America's darling. Everyone is going to be rooting for them. They're a fun team. They return everybody. I get the hype. Maybe they're the recency bias of the very thing that I said shouldn't govern my decisions of the secret scrimmage where UNC just – and I get they were without Elijah Martin. Like, I get that. UNC to win comfortably has me, like, a little shook. I don't know whether that says more about Florida Atlantic more about FAU without Martin versus UNC. Oh, are they putting it together? Question mark. I just think that we are getting caught up in a team that really caught fire and is extremely well coached. However, again, going back to my point about the NCAA tournament being a high variance kind of outcome, they squeaked by Memphis in a game that we shall not discuss. And then, to their credit, beat some good Tennessee and Kansas State teams. However, you can't tell me that, like, listen, you play who's in front of you. So the fact that they got Fairleigh Dickinson in the second round, yeah. However, I don't know. I don't think they'll like fall out of the top 20. Maybe they fall out of the top 25 after a couple losses, but like I don't think they are just gonna like fall off the face of the earth. I want that to be clear. But I am lower on them than top 10.
Okay. Karl, I have a feeling that you might be echoing a lot of that. But
Can you remind me which Which question we're on?
What team ranked in the top 25 are you lower on the consensus? And the theme of it is based off of Alex's comment last year.
Yeah, I love this question. This is one that we do every year for or one that's similar for our hot takes episode, which is we pick a top 25 team to miss the tournament. Not to toot my own horn here, but I've gotten it right the last 2 seasons by picking Virginia 2 years ago and Villanova last year. And to just kind of, pull back the curtain on my thought process for this, I always feel like there's a team that ends up in the top 25 or ends up, receiving votes, like getting highly regarded. And the main argument for why is like it's such and such program, it's such and such coach. They'll figure it out. Even though maybe on paper the team is not necessarily all that good. I haven't picked my I haven't picked the team that I think will miss this year, but I do have a couple that I'm lower on for that very reason. And the one that I'll go with here, this pains me, and it kind of goes against something I said earlier, but I think I'm going to go Baylor. They are demonstrably less talented than they were last year, and that was a team that didn't even make the Sweet 16. I love Scott Drew. They couldn't guard at all last year. They've gotten a little bit better defensively, I think, at least on paper. But they did not bring their backcourt is transfers. And I am such a big Ray J. Dennis guy. I've loved watching him at Toledo these last few years. He's a very good guard, but he's not Keontae George. He's not LJ Cryer or not LJ Cryer. Was LJ Cryer? I don't know. I'm just getting all my names mixed up. But he is he going to come in and be really good? Like be the offensive engine for Baylor? Not sure. I think it's like, Scott Drew. It's Scott Drew. He'll figure it out. It's Baylor. But they're a little sketchy to me. They're just a little bit sketchy to me. And the Big 12 is going to be a gauntlet yet again. So I think there's potential for things to not go as planned for them.
Okay. There's definitely a thought process behind this question, because I think there's a way to ask, like, who's somebody outside the top 25 that is deserving of, like, I could say, like, oh, who could win a national title or whatever. But we kind of talked about some of the mid-majors, I think, that are at least going to make the competitive answer, whether they think it's going to be really hard for a team to win a national title. I know UConn literally just did it last year, being outside the top 25. We'll kind of rapid fire a lot of these next couple ones as questions. We've also done them last year, so these should be fun. Best freshman in the country, Alex. Who wins freshman of the year?
Isaiah Collier.
Karl? That was easy.
Yeah, I'll also throw out Collier, although I am very intrigued by the Big Ten Freshman of the Year race. I'll say that.
I'm looking.
Taco Bell legend Mackenzie Mbako.
I'm excited for Walt. Is it Jacoby Walter? I got it right there. Out of Baylor. I'm excited too. He reminds me a lot of Jarris Walker, and I loved Jarris Walker. I made that clear last year. So, who's a sleeper in the Power 8 to win the conference tournament in bid steal? So your Virginia Tech, a la Virginia Tech type team.
What were the extra two that you include in the Power 8?
That's a good question. So, and this is for the way we had to determine for the magazine. I just went off of that. So we determined ACC, Big 10, Big 12, Big East, Mountain West, Pac-12, SEC, and West Coast Conference. That 8, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep. So, who's got the biggest chance to be a sleeper in bid steal? And I'll actually give you all mine so we can be quick here and just kind of give you some time to think. I think Air Force, if everything goes right and Ritis Petritis has just like this otherworldly Mountain West pick of the year, like I have him for player of the year, I think Air Force is going to like knock somebody off, whatever. Obviously, that's going to be a really big gauntlet to overcome, right? I think the Mountain West is insane this year, just like it is every year. But we've seen it happen before, and we've seen it happen in a lot worse situations where like Oregon State's done it, Georgetown has done it. So we've seen some instances where it's like head scratching, and I think Air Force would be head scratching when a lot of people are picking them to finish bottom of the conference again, but they returned over 80% of their minutes and over 8% of their scoring. So I think if they have all the pieces come together there, I think they're just kind of like again, Butler was wrong last year. I understand. It's like that kind of answer for me, but just dart throw Air Force would be one. Obviously, I can give you one that's more realistic, but Air Force is my agenda I'm willing to push. So, Karl, now that you hear that.
Yeah, so out of the, the traditional like Power Six, there weren't any that I felt like really good about. In the interest of morality, I'm not going to say Ole Miss, although that did come to mind. I just can't sit here and be like, yeah, Chris Beard, go Chris Beard. So hopefully not, but I'll say there's potential there. If things click for them, it's not a bad roster, and we know Chris Beard, despite his problems off the court, is a very good head coach uh, in terms of like X's and O's and stuff. So potential there. I actually also went to the Mountain West. Colorado State is healthy now, and Isaiah Stevens is a baller, and that is the type of thing that gets you wins in conference tournaments. I haven't seen a bracketology in the preseason where they're projecting Colorado State to make the tournament. So to me, this is, even if they're like third in the Mountain West, I think this would be stealing a bid. And then I wasn't sure if, I asked the question about who was included in the Power Eight. I wasn't sure if the American was included, but in the event that they were, I was going to go Tulane.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm back on my Tulane hype train this year.
They did lose a really big piece, but then also returned the second highest score. So, Alex?
I'm gonna go with they're not really the program of the program, Virginia Tech, mostly because the ACC will get probably 5 to 6 bids, and Virginia Tech projects to be outside of that world, and they're so old. Like Sean Padula and Hunter Couture have been around for a million years. You had Robbie Barron, who's played 120 games for Northwestern. And I think they shored up a little bit of the front court. Mike Young is one of the best X's and O's coaches in the country, period, let alone the ACC. So I really struggled with this one, and I'm not necessarily sure. Like I was half-heartedly joking 2 years ago about that Virginia Tech team, but I was like fairly confident. This I feel really iffy about, but for the sake of time, I'll go with the Hokies.
They also have a 4-star freshman as well. He'll have a great backcourt to learn from. Don't get me wrong, but he probably won't play like the minutes he probably expects as a 4-star. What player in the Pacific time zone? I love this question last year, even though the cop-out answer was San Diego State. So let's say excluding San Diego State and Gonzaga, let's just take those out of consideration. And Mahaney from St. Mary's, we'll take him out of consideration too. What Pacific time zone player are you staying up late to watch the most, Karl?
As an NBA draft guy, I'm going to double down on Isaiah Collier here because I've seen a lot of people suggest that he could be the number one pick in the 2024 draft. I want to see if he's actually that guy. So I would stay up to watch him for scouting purposes and because I think USC has the potential to be a fun team anyway. So,
Alex?
I would like to introduce a simple caveat in that Caleb Love will play at least 45% of his games in the Pacific time zone. So I'll say him for that 45% of the time. Beyond that, though, I will say if he suits up, I will be catching at least 5 Bronny James games because I'm very curious to see I guess just how his game translate beyond the fact that he hasn't really been on the court since his cardiovascular incident. So more so like maybe falling a little victim to the hype here, but he just generally seems like such a good kid and he has an unreasonable amount of hate for an 18-year-old. So I would like to see him just succeed. Plus, I would like to see how his defense translates because that's probably the best part of his game. So,
yeah, I think if I gave you Mountain Time Zone, I think my answer would be Williams out of Colorado, who again also would play a lot of his minutes in the Pacific Time Zone. So I like the caveat. What team that missed the tournament last year? This slipped in here by accident. What team that missed the tournament last year has the best chance of bouncing back? Alex?
UNC? Haha. I mean, like
They're the obvious answer.
it can't get any worse for one of the 5 blue bloods of college basketball.
Yeah.
So you return Armando Bacot, who's one of the top 10 players in college basketball. Key point. Again, the point has been that Caleb Love not being there is addition by subtraction. RJ Davis is really good. Elliot Cadeau, they just need to put the ball in his hands. He's such a good passer. And he might be coming off the bench if the secret scrimmage lineup that Hubert Davis used is true, because he started like Paxson and Cormac Ryan and Harrison Ingram. So like 3 wings. Which Elliot Cadeau being your backup point guard is just absurd. So I will say UNC, and it feels a little bit like a cop-out, but yeah.
Karl, cop out again. Let's see if you go with UNC as well.
I didn't go UNC, although I did have them sort of penciled in, but I'm going to go Villanova.
Nice.
This was a team I was completely out on last year, but this year, this is a roster that if Jay Wright was still the head coach, people would be hyping them up a lot more as a like Elite Eight potential Final Four team, because they have so much experience. It's a very quality team. They bring in my guy Hakeem Hart from Villanova, from Maryland. I got to give him a shout. Justin Moore, if he's healthy, all indications are that he is, then that's a good sign. Yep. You give Kyle Neptune kind of the pass for that first year. This is the year where like it's time to prove that you can usher Villanova into the next era. You hope Mark Armstrong takes a step as that guy off the bench, and then you get to it. But their whole starting lineup is 4th and 5th year guys. It's a good roster. Right. They're good. I think they should be a tournament team.
I said last year that we wanted to make start bench cuts. I wanted to make start bench cuts more popular in college basketball, and we're ready to get to them now. So you guys saw the first one, and I omitted the other 2 from the questions because I want the other 2 to be reactionary, and I do think that they're going to be interesting. So you should only have the one that you saw on the screen when I sent you the screenshot. You should have Ryan Kalkbrenner, Hunter Dickinson, and Donovan Clingan. Alex Cervantes, what is your answer? Start bench cut.
I don't remember seeing this at all.
Even better.
So it's Kalkbrenner,
Dickinson, and Dickinson.
And Clingan. Okay.
So, right.
Ryan
Kalkbrenner, Hunter Dickinson, or Donovan Clingan. For context, last year was Sheboy. For those that didn't listen to last year was Sheboy, Timmy, and Bacot, and it was fully healthy. Same goes for these 3 as well, fully healthy in any of these examples. And you guys used health as a big kicker Dickinson. Last year.
I loathe Hunter Dickinson. This is tough.
I like this because Karl has more time to think. So in the next one, I'm going to give him the first one.
Okay. This is in the structure of a 5v5, right? Like not like individually.
Yeah. I mean, however you want to take it. I mean, start
I'm
bench
not
cut.
Sure Hunter Dickinson makes a team better. Oh my gosh, this is so hard. This is so unbelievably hard.
The next 2 aren't going to be hardy, or aren't going to be easy either, I have to say. This is probably the hardest of the 3, though, I'll be fair. I do want to
I'm just going to get clowned regardless of what the answer is. What Twitter fan base am I scared of the least?
What player do you like the most? That's the way the question's framed.
Okay, I'll go.
Or best, I guess, whatever.
I'll start Kalkbrenner. Oh my God.
Okay.
Start
who are we benching?
Yeah.
Who are we benching? Who are we cutting?
Because one of these guys has come off the bench successfully and won a national title.
I knew you. I was hoping you would take the caveat. I love it.
Bench Clingan.
You cut
Hunter Dickinson mostly because I don't want to deal with a potential podcast in my locker room. Okay. We already have one podcast in this hypothetical locker room.
Karl.
I'm going to that was actually the exact list I had as well. I'm going to start Kalkbrenner. Wow. Nice. Bench Clingan. We've seen that work before. And then I'm going to cut Hunter Dickinson for the one reason that he jerked around Maryland fans for like 3 months this offseason, pretending like he was going to go there when it was really just Kansas the whole time. And for the other reason that a team centered around Hunter Dickinson has not gone to the Elite Eight. I don't have they.
I think you're right. I think
Yeah,
you're right.
I don't think it's
you
been.
think Elite Eight as a freshman? Or are we not counting that as like being centered around him?
Yeah, it wasn't.
Was that I was trying to remember if that was an Elite Eight or a Sweet 16 team.
That was an Elite Eight team because they lost.
Oh, was it? Okay, then I recant that statement. But he's dead to me. He did not
The
come.
point still applies.
He's dead to me. So that still stands. I take back what I said about teams being built around him not being that successful. Although the last 2 years, not as good as they should have been. So,
yeah, I omitted Edie for the obvious reason, and I'm glad that one was so difficult. Start bench cut, and this will be Karl. Isaiah Collier, who we just talked about earlier, Elliot Cadeau, or Stephon Castle. We're going freshman. And if Collier's too easy, go ahead and tell me now so that I can omit him and give you one more to make it hard. Because if obviously Collier's that you've already said he was the freshman of the year, which obviously has to mean he's probably the obvious answer.
Give someone else for the sake of the exercise.
DJ Wagner.
Oh, that made it
DJ Wagner,
sure.
DJ Wagner, Elliot Cadeau, or Stephon Castle. Start bench cut. I omitted these on purpose.
This might be this is going to come off, I think, as a very like ill-informed take. But I'm going to do my best here. I'm going to start Wagner because I think that will be the most fun. I'm going to bench Castle. I was actually watching Castle film today, and I liked what I saw. So he gets a spot. Cadeau, I think I'm going to cut Cadeau. I love that saying it now, but I think I'm going to have to.
The thought process behind the question was that Castle, and it doesn't matter if I say this for Alex answers, but Castle, I think, is being forgotten about because he plays for the defending national champion, and obviously he'll be the starting point guard. But
I agree with that statement. I think that's very well put.
Yeah, which is why I excluded Collier. Alex, start bench cut. Elliot Cadeau, Stephon Castle, and DJ Wagner.
Man. Start Castle, bench Cadeau, cut Wagner.
Wow. Any reasoning quickly?
No.
Fair.
Literally, I was like, what?
Yeah. No, we're good. We'll move on.
Castle can kind of do it all. So
that's a great point. This is one that I'm excited about that I don't think I've ever seen anyone do, and I'm very excited that you haven't seen it yet. Karl, hire, bench, fire. So I'm gonna give you 3 coaches. Hire, bench, fire. And when I say bench, we're gonna make an assistant. Because obviously that would be the only way to make this logically. I couldn't rhyme the 3. But hire, bench, fire. Mick Cronin, Eric Musselman, or Ed Cooley. I tried to give you 3 coaches and 3 completely different places in their careers, hypothetically. Kind of. I tried my best. It's not exactly the perfect 3, but I think those are 3 ones that are going to make you think the hardest. Mick Cronin, Eric Musselman, Ed Cooley. Hire, bench, fire.
I'm firing Ed Cooley. What has he done? Like realistically, like what has he done? That's an easy fire for me. The other 2 is a little tougher. Musselman is more fun, that's for sure. He has definitely gotten the results lately. And he gets guys out of the portal, which I like. I think I might. Yeah, I'm gonna hire Muss. I'm gonna, assistant coach Mick Cronin, which is no disrespect to him, but and then Ed Cooley's can kick rocks. I don't need him on my team.
Is there a third guy that might have made that more difficult? I threw Cooley out because he's the hot name in the Big East. I tried my best. Maybe not.
Just throwing Rick Pitino in just for like the heck of it would have made it interesting.
Yeah, sure. Right. I feel like that was an easy person to keep out. Alex, hire, bench, fire. Mick Cronin, Eric Musselman, or Ed Cooley.
Hire Cronin, Muss on the bench for vibes and recruiting. Nice. I only want Muss to focus on recruiting. He doesn't even have to focus on X's and O's at all.
That's a great
only
point.
Getting guys, only calling guys.
Oh, just have him be your John Shire, basically.
I'll take the level 1 violations.
That's actually.
Give me the level 1 violations. We're winning multiple national championships.
Okay.
And I'll fire Ed Cooley.
I love it. All right, these next two are just kind of placeholders to get us to the last two, so we'll be quick. If you could swap any two players on any two teams, and how you answer this is totally up to you, but I would hope the goal would be to win a national championship. But if you could make a team better, or if you could swap any two players on any two teams for any reason, who would you swap? Alex?
So this exercise is not taking two players and putting them on a team, right? It's like taking one player off one team and then flipping them.
Yep.
Okay.
Are we trying to make both teams better or just one?
Totally up to you.
Okay.
I wanted to make this hypothetical random. I wasn't happy with these two, I'll be honest. There's going to be one more that makes sense, but if you could swap any two players on any two teams.
Okay.
And whatever narrative or agenda you like.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Can I frame it one way?
I'll give Purdue Duke walk-on guard Spencer Hubbard and give Duke Zach Edey. And I think that makes Duke immediately better.
Never mind. This question didn't disappoint. Karl. Christ.
All right. Here's one. I was actually thinking about this earlier, which is funny. I'm going to take PJ Hall, and I'm going to add him to Creighton to play the 4. And it's just going to be the best shooting team you've ever seen. Sorry, Clemson, but PJ Hall is no longer on the team.
There are Clemson fans that are going to hear this because there are Clemson fans that listen to the show. I know there's at least 4 of them, so this is going to be really good. I'm sure.
It's not out of any animosity towards Clemson. I just think
And who did you swap
you want to
again?
throw another shooter. They have I forget his name. He's a freshman though, so that's why you're
taking some random dude off of Creighton. Oh,
well, yeah. Sorry, I hope he
God.
thrives with Clemson. I'm totally blanking on his name, but they're projecting to start a freshman power forward who theoretically can shoot, but I know PJ Hall can shoot. He shot 40% last year. He's very experienced. I think the Almanac had him as a top 20 player. Throw PJ Hall on Creighton and let the fireworks, fly.
Okay, I guess in the same vein, if you could swap any two head coaches on any two teams, who would you swap? What would make college basketball more fun, or what would make the team more interesting? I don't know. However, again, this is completely up for interpretation. We're in the point of we're about to do hypotheticals that make no sense. So this is just warm up for the next 5 minutes. Karl?
I don't know why, but the first thing that came to mind was swapping Rick Pitino and Kenny Payne, because I think that would be absolutely hilarious.
I love any hypothetical with Rick Pitino, so that's a perfect answer. Alex?
Oh, I went.
It's a great start.
I went swap Mike Woodson and Matt Painter.
You just officially. I'll send you a receipt for the Lost Indiana audience, or an invoice for my Lost Indiana audience. Just the entire state. I'm just gonna watch it plummet on Spotify's numbers. Thanks, appreciate that. All right, the last two questions that I actually
Swap
really
Tom
enjoyed.
Izzo and Juwan Howard. Shout out sleepers.
I love that. All right, put together a starting. I gave you time. This was part of the reason I wanted to send it to you ahead of time. Put together a starting 5 of the current players in college basketball, but you are one of the starting lineup, and the goal is to win a national championship. I'm gonna open up the floor to whoever would like to go first. We are over an hour on, so if you'd like to get going, don't rush or anything, but I do want to leave room for the last one that apparently warranted a 2nd and 6th place finish for your teams. So whoever would like to go first on this, I want to hear your starting 5 that can win a national championship. Throw benches out the window. Who cares? Who would like to go first?
I shall go first.
Alex came off me immediately, so this is perfect.
Well, I'm going to take Zach Edey. He's going to be on this roster.
Okay, so he's playing your 5. Got it. I'm going to put them down as you go. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to need someone who can effectively get him the ball, but also given the fact that I am both undersized, unathletic, and out of shape, I need someone who can defend opposing guards. So we're going to take DeJuan Harris at the 1.
Okay. All right. So DeJuan Harris running your 1. Zach Edey's your 5. Okay.
I am now at the 2. This is going to be a disaster. I'm going to get attacked in ball screens all game. I will end up on approximately 7 posters per night. and I will be shooting 0 for 10 from the field before fouling out because I get tired of playing. Anyway, the 3 will be Terrence Shannon Jr., strictly for vibes, and we need a lefty in the lineup. And then my 4 will be PJ Hall.
Wow, I like this team. Okay, this team's got some grit. So to recap before we get to Karl's, DeJuan Harris at the 1, Alex Cervantes at the 2, Terrence Shannon Jr. at the 3, PJ Hall at the 4, and Zach Edey at the 5. And that team is competing for a national championship in the championship game against Karl Heiser and who other 4?
Yeah, this is going to be kind of tough to have us actually face off because I also have 2 of those players on my team.
I knew this was going to happen.
So I was trying to think, like, where would I be? I will be a liability no matter where they put me on the court. It's just a question of, like, where I think I would be the least amount of a liability. And I think that, I mean, I can't play 3 through 5 because I'm not quick enough. I'm not tall enough. Like, it's just not going to happen. And I don't have, like, the court vision to be a floor general and play the 1. So that just puts me at the 2. I'm an okay shooter. I'm not a Division I level shooter by any means, but, like, I could hit, like, a shot if I was wide open, probably. But I would also advise against, like, running any sets for me. So that's kind of out the window also. So biggest liability, though, will be defense. Like, even if I'm giving maximum effort, I'm just going to get cooked all day long. I cannot play defense at all. So why even try? So I'm going to have some guys who can play defense, and because I won't be getting the ball, I'm going to have guys who can shoot as well. We're going to throw Jamal Shed at the 1. He was the Defensive Player of the Year in the American last year and also led the conference in assists. At the 3, we're going to throw Justin Moore, experienced, can shoot the ball a little bit, puts in effort on defense. Love that. So they're really going to have to carry the absolute dead weight that I will be. PJ Hall to space the floor, and then Zach Edey down low. And we're just going to give him the ball, and that will be that. So that is my team.
Did anybody get omitted that you would have liked to include, either of you? Alex, you're off mute. So, anybody that you considered strongly that you were like, this would have been a good fit also, that isn't Zach Edey, I guess, or whatever, I don't care. He obviously was getting included.
Oddly enough, I really wrestled with, like, a guy like Mark Mitchell at, like, a small ball 4 who can kind of guard, like, a multi-positional defender. He doesn't really have to touch the rock because, like, there will be other offensive players. However, I think I would have had to, like, boot DeJuan Harris from the team and add, like, more offensively minded score first point guard. So I would have had to shuffle around, but I really wrestled with Mark Mitchell at the 4.
I like that team building. Karl, anybody get excluded?
I was definitely debating how much defense would be needed to offset the fact that I will be playing absolutely none. So Deron Holmes was a consideration, but I thought that would hurt my spacing with Edey at the 5. And I considered Baylor Shireman just because I like him and he can do a lot of stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. I thought this was, like, the best 5 I could.
I like it. No, I think they're great 5s. I'm curious if there's anybody that was omitted for any reason. So,
also, Zach Edey, if there's anybody who can carry inexperienced guards who shrink when the lights come on, it is Zach Edey. So we've seen him do it.
By that measure,
that's no shade to Braden Smith or Fletcher Loyer. I think they'll be good this year, but we've seen Zach Edey do something like that before. So
I love it. All right, I could do this all day, but question 21, and there's no elevator pitch here. This is actually going to be a more positive outlook since you both were, you basically said that the Big Ten had to dissolve for your teams to win anything, and you both were second, by the way. Northwestern finished second in the Big Ten last year. I want to make that clear when you picked them 12th, and Maryland predicted 9th. So I'll ask Karl first. If I were to sit down with you one-on-one at the end of the year and say, blank was a successful season for Maryland, or it was a successful season for Maryland, however you would like to frame that context, what would you say is that answer?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think it must be said right out the gate that last year's success was definitely ahead of schedule. So I want to be realistic here because I think staying about the same is not necessarily a failure, even though I think the team is going to be more talented this year than it was last year. I think a top 4 finish in the Big Ten is an absolute must. If they finish outside the top 4, I consider that a failure. You have the clear top 2 in my mind of Purdue and Michigan State. And then after that, if you want to say like Illinois or like Indiana is on a heater and like somehow finishes above them, fine. But top 4 has to happen. And I think winning a tournament game, I would also put as like that is needed for a successful season. I think they have the pieces to go on a run, like a deeper run than just winning one game. I think they are equipped to win multiple, but have to recognize that they are a little bit ahead of schedule. So it might not necessarily be better and better and better every season. Like if we can hold steady at around the level that we were last year, that's a positive sign to me. It shows that last year wasn't a fluke and that Willard is building this program and bringing them back to where they can be competitive, and we can worry about like winning a Big Ten title or going to like Sweet 16s and Elite Eights a little bit down the line, because I think guys like Jamie Heiser will stick around and be part of a core of guys, and Jonathan Lamoth will be there. So, and maybe you never know. Like I think Deshaun Harris-Smith will probably be gone after the season, but if he sticks around, then that's a nice little core that we got there. So, yeah, that those are my thoughts on Maryland. I'm excited for this year, though.
As you should be, Alex.
I want to say first that last year very well might be like the greatest season in program history. I think Northwestern undoubtedly is the hardest job in the Big Ten. Hardest place to win in the Big Ten. You deal with, it's hard to get fan support just with the students generally. And it's hard as well because when you are near Chicago, you have all the alumni from all the other Big Ten schools just flocking to your arena as like a little homecoming of sorts whenever their team comes to town. So the fact that they won 12 game, a program best 12 games in conference play, Boo Boo is a all Big Ten player, so was Chase Audige. Like a lot of things went well. They won a lot of close games, which had historically not happened in the Chris Collins tenure. That being said, for a successful season with hype through the roof, never experienced before, I think 3 things have to happen. They have to finish top 8 in the Big Ten, I would say. They have to, at the very least, make the NCAA tournament, but I think they also have to win it, given it being Bowie's last season. And I think in that same realm, I actually think Boo has to be an All-American for those 2 first things to happen, which in turn makes, I think he has to be one of the top 15 players in college basketball. So
I think that's good. I think that's right. No, look, to give you some context, State playing Creighton last year was an undoubtedly worst case scenario draw from a 6-11 line. I almost cried when I saw it pop up. And if they are any seed better than 11 with a better team, without obviously a player that should have been picked in the NBA draft last year, if NC State wins one game in the NCAA tournament, I think it's a successful season. Honestly, realistic expectation, if they finish anything higher than an 11 seed, which they should, if the ACC is not that good and they're going to be one of the best teams in that top 1 through 6 or whatever you want to call it, why can't they be a 6, 7, 8, or 9 seed, which is realistically better? So that was just kind of the way I framed the thought process of the question. Fellas, an hour and 13 minutes later, thank you. Absolutely. It was so much fun. I want you to have time to get your plugs in. Daily picks are still happening, I assume, coming up this year. Absolutely. All right. Well, plug away where they can find that stuff. Obviously, the TikTok. Give me a follower count that we're at now. I think last time we were on here, we congratulated you on 10K. So that was a huge, huge win there. But plug away and then let people know where they can find daily picks and TikToks and things like that.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for having us, Trevor. This was great. Always good to be on 2-pointers. As far as where you can find us, our tags are on here, at KHeiserCBB, at Cervantes P. Alex. It's at Jim Range Pod on everything. Daily picks will be back on Twitter. We hit 60% against the spread last year, which was setting the bar very high. Probably won't happen again this year, to be quite frank, but we've been very good the last 2 years. So that's something you're into, you can come follow us for that. TikTok, we're at just a shade under 14K. So growth has not been as like explosive as it was early on, but we're growing, and the content will still be coming there. Trying to get more stuff out on Instagram, and considering doing a little more like long form stuff in addition to podcast episodes on YouTube, but haven't quite decided what that will look like. Anyway, at Jim Range Pod on everything. And I would like to plug the ECB magazine, because I think it can't be understated how big of an undertaking it is, no matter who it is, to preview all of college basketball and look into the entire landscape. So that is a big undertaking, and at $10, I'm sure that will be worth your money. So
Look, we appreciate it either way, and everything for you guys will be linked below, of course. Yeah, to think that when you do the math, it's 90.5 teams per person, and that includes the editor. So just want to put it out there that I think it was Cleveland State. Your lineup has Zach Edey and Braden Smith and some others in it. In the preview, we apologize. There's going to be some mistakes, but otherwise, no, thank you. We greatly appreciate that. And look, college basketball is back. Like I said, I'm super excited. Like Karl said, you can get the Everything College Basketball magazine, ecbmagazine.bigcartel.com, $10, preview every single college basketball team. If you're one of the 3 or 4 teams that we accidentally messed up one of the graphics on, we apologize. But I greatly appreciate you guys' time today. Like I said, everything for you guys will be linked below. Don't fade Jimmer Range is what I learned. 60% did not know it was that good against the spread. I bring that up because if people want to sign up for anything sports betting or daily fantasy related, they can use Sign Up Expert. Link in the top of the description, signupexpert.com/TPP for any promotional sports book or daily fantasy site where you can go and you can take all the picks from Jimmer Range. So greatly appreciate you guys being on again. This has been the 2 Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett. College basketball is almost back, baby.